I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, more heated words, but still no agreement on day 8 of the partial government shutdown. And with 6 weeks till San Diego's special election, we'll have a look at endorsements in the mayor's race.
I'm Peggy Pico. This month marks the 10th anniversary of California's biggest wildfire, the 2003 Cedar Fire. Our conversation with a local survivor and fire chief about lessons learned. Plus, our preview of tonight's Frontline documentary on the NFL and brain injury, including a telling interview with Junior Seau.
You have to sacrifice your body. You have to sacrifice years down the line.
Women line up at Qualcomm today for screenings that could save their lives. And work has started on a new link between San Diego and the Tijuana airport. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Day 8 of the partial government shutdown, still no agreement to end the stalemate or to raise the nation's debt limit.
Refusing to negotiate is an untenable position. And frankly, by refusing to negotiate, Harry Reid and the president are putting our country on a pretty dangerous path. Listen, there's never been a president in our history that did not negotiate over the debt limit. Never. Not once.
My suggestion to the Speaker has been and will continue to be, let's stop the excuses. Let's take a vote in the House. Let's end this shutdown right now. Let's put people back to work. There are enough reasonable Republicans and Democrats in the House who are willing to vote yes on a budget that the Senate has already passed.
The president says he's willing to negotiate with Republicans on anything, but only after the shutdown ends and the debt limit is raised. Boehner says the president wants an unconditional surrender from the GOP. To avoid any disruptions from the shutdown, San Diego-based National University says it will cover tuition costs for its active duty military students for the next 2 months. Military personnel make up about 13% of the school's student body. My, how time flies. 6 weeks left until San Diego's special election for mayor. And almost every day we hear about a group throwing its support behind one of the candidates. KPBS Metro reporter Sandia Dirks joins us with more on what an endorsement really means. Sandia, what can you tell us about these endorsements?
Well, there are a lot. It seems like every day someone else comes out to rally behind one candidate or another. All the nods so far are split between the top 3 frontrunners. That's Councilman Kevin Faulkner and David Alvarez and former Assemblyman Nathan Fletcher. I talked with Mesa College political scientist Carl Luna, and he says there are really 2 kinds of endorsements: individual endorsements and those of bigger umbrella organizations. In terms of the individual endorsements, they act like surrogates for the candidates. So for Faulkner, that would be former Mayor Jerry Saunders, for Fletcher, Lorena Gonzalez, and for Alvarez, Donna Fry. So by supporting candidates, those individual politicians, they lend their name and their already established voter base to those that are running.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what about endorsements from bigger groups such as unions?
Well, that's when it actually it's worth a lot more, and it translates into money. It's more than just a name. A big umbrella organization brings with it an election infrastructure. For example, when the Labor Council endorsed David Alvarez, they also sponsored a political action committee, and that raised almost $1 million for Alvarez. So an endorsement can also bring with it large donations and volunteers who are able to get out the vote. And that is important, especially in a short campaign like this. Political science professor Carl Luna also notes that a candidate will also owe those who help out with endorsements. So an endorsement isn't just shorthand into what a candidate stands for. It can also provide a window into who a candidate will work with and for in the future.
KPBS Metro reporter Sandia Dirks. Now, the candidates will join us Monday, October 14th for a KPBS News special. We hope you'll join us. It's the mayor's race, a debate at 5 right here on KPBS television. That wildfire on Camp Pendleton in Oceanside is expected to be fully contained tonight. It's burned more than 2,000 acres since Saturday. No word yet on a cause. Several structures were damaged, but no one was hurt. County supervisors are asking the Defense Department to transfer some retired cargo planes to help battle flames and wildfire in the backcountry. The C-27s can be retrofitted to hold more flame retardant than current planes. Supervisors say the Forest Service currently has a shortage of planes, and the C-27s could be ready for transport in a few months. October marks the 10th anniversary of the deadly Cedar Fire in San Diego County. Peggy Pico talks with a survivor and a fire chief about lessons learned.
At dusk on October 25, 2003, the largest fire in California's history was started. Fueled by hot Santa Ana winds and dry brush, it burned from Ramona to Cuyamaca, Julian to Escondido, Scripps Ranch to Lakeside, and Mount Laguna to El Cajon. It took 9 days to contain the blaze that left 15 people dead and destroyed more than 2,200 homes and 2,800 buildings. Here to talk about her experience escaping this fire is Sandra Younger, author of the new book, The Fire Outside My Window. A survivor tells the true story of California's epic Cedar Fire. And CAL FIRE Deputy Chief of Operations, Kelly Zombro. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Sandra, let's start with you. When did you know you had to evacuate from this fire in Wildcat Canyon where your home was, and how'd you do it?
We knew we had to evacuate when we woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning and saw flames outside our window. We lived on the mountainside in the canyon, and directly across from us on the other side, on the other mountain, there was a huge swath of flames. So we realized we had to get out. We had very little time. We just grabbed whatever we could lay our hands on, mostly just pictures off dressers, walls. I threw them in a laundry basket. We grabbed our dogs, we grabbed some of my husband's negatives, and we ran for our lives.
And you had to make it down through a lot of thick smoke at that point, right? In the middle of the night, and that had to be very difficult, I assume.
It was difficult because the smoke was as thick as if you looked outside a plane in a thunderhead, and we literally couldn't see where we were going. I was driving and I couldn't find the road, and thank goodness a bobcat jumped right to my headlight at the moment that I needed him and dashed off into the smoke, and somehow I knew to follow him, and he kept us on the road.
Got you out of there, even though you did lose your home. Now, Chief Zombro, you were on duty at the San Diego Country Estates near Ramona when this happened. What sort of difficulties were you having in evacuating people?
It was the sheer magnitude of the fire. It was moving extremely fast in a very large area. The sheriff's deputies were heavily engaged in the country estates and parts of Barona Mesa and so on. But this fire is in the middle of the night. It's getting exponentially larger quickly, and the sheriff's department had to bring in resources from all over the county, police departments, federal agencies, and so on to help with that.
And there was no 911. There was no way to get the word out, correct? You tried to bring a helicopter in?
Yes, there was no reverse 911 at that time, and we did have a helicopter fly. We asked them to fly in advance, get on the loudspeaker, make sure people wake up. Unfortunately, after banging their heads together inside the helicopter, because of the winds crashing against them, they decided that they were going to get themselves killed and landed the helicopter.
And had to withdraw. No, Sandra, in your book, you interviewed more than 100 people for this. Give us an example of one of the stories of people, how they were coping with this.
There are so many dramatic stories, even more dramatic than ours, driving down a mountain through smoke and flame. Some of our neighbors had to jump into their swimming pools. They couldn't get out through the fire. They had to turn around, go home, jump into their pools, watch their house burn down right there. And they were even in the pool with snakes and rabbits and rats because we were all reduced to survival mode.
What do you want readers to get from these stories?
I wrote the book as a tribute to the people we lost, as an official documentation of this historic event. So I hope that people understand why these things happened. I hope we can lay to rest some of the misconceptions that have persisted since the fire. And I hope people realize that the story is really about the triumph of the human spirit, even in the face of adversity.
Okay, and some things have been learned, Chief Zombro. What have we learned? What's changed? What are we doing today to fight a fire like this?
Well, a lot of things have changed in the county, and I want to say Sandra's book captures what had happened so that 30 years from now, somebody can read and realize we also have a history repeating itself in this county, and this is not the first time we've been through one of these. Fortunately, though, since that fire, we've got the San Diego County Fire Authority, thanks to the County Board of Supervisors. We've got resources and support that is happening throughout the backcountry in those areas. The Sheriff's Department has 2 helicopters. The City of San Diego has 2 helicopters. None of that existed in 2003. The reverse 911, it's in place now. The 211, the San Diego's 211 program, so you can make phone calls to get information, all kinds of different things. And of course, 10 years, into the technological world, there's Twitters and all those other things that can happen now that make it real-time information.
Well, we have a lot more and your tips on what we can do to protect our homes from wildfire, but we are out of time. Sandra Younger and CAL FIRE Deputy Chief Kelly Zombro, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Governor Jerry Brown has signed a measure to push forward on turning wastewater into drinking water. The bill calls for studies on how to regulate the process. Brown says recycling is the key to more quality water for drought-thirsty California. The governor also signed a bill to change how homeowners and businesses pay for electricity. Joining us to talk about it is KPBS business and environment reporter Eric Anderson. Eric, how will this law change our SDG&E bills?
Well, Dwayne, the change is really only possible a few years down the road, so take note. Things will stay the way they are right now, but they could be changing coming up. Now, what AB 327 does is move the rate-setting authority from the legislature back to the California Public Utilities Commission. You remember back in 2001, state lawmakers took over that job during the height of the electricity crisis. Since then, utilities have been clamoring about how outdated the state's power rate structure has become. With the new law, regulators can implement changes.
So what kind of changes are we talking about?
Well, the power rates, for example, could be adjusted. Customers now pay a specific price for power depending on how much they use. Utilities have been pushing for adjustments because they say the lower rates are locked in, forcing bigger users to increasingly subsidize the smaller users, and they're looking for a different distribution. Regulators could also allow power companies to put a $10 flat fee on a power bill. Solar advocates don't like that because they see it as an attack on their money savings, but there are things that they might like. The governor says that regulators could also choose to lift the cap on the number of people who can sell power back to utilities. And he says 33% renewable energy requirement for utilities. He says that's a floor, not a ceiling. He says regulators should try to encourage the use of solar, wind, and geothermal power.
KPBS business and environment reporter Eric Anderson. Software experts say the federal healthcare sign-up site is slow because it doesn't let people window shop for plans. You have to create an account to see your options on healthcare.gov. But experts say it slows things down. The site's been open for a week and its computers have already been upgraded. The site serves about 36 states, helping them lower what they pay for health coverage. California has its own health exchange, and Covered California says they processed more than 16,000 applications in the first 5 days. While the online sign-up has had its share of glitches, wait times are now shorter for people who call Covered California, down from an average of 40 minutes to less than 4 minutes. Now, this is the time of year when you see those pink ribbons almost everywhere in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Even football teams have gotten into the fight to find a cure for breast cancer. About 100 women showed up at Qualcomm Stadium for free mammogram testing, courtesy of the San Diego Chargers. Most of them over the age of 40 who haven't had a test in years. Deborah Morgan's family has a history of breast cancer. She came down from Hillcrest for the exam.
I've been uninsured for many years, and I thought this was a good way to come out and not only be taken care of, but to also pass on, good positive thoughts to other women that were here.
With one woman diagnosed with breast cancer every 2 minutes in the U.S., screenings like these create camaraderie. Angela Christensen is from Claremont.
A lot of friends I know couldn't come today, so maybe we can find out where the next event is and they can go there, and it's really a great thing that they're doing for everyone.
Laura Farmer Sherman says no one will be turned away. She's with the Susan G. Komen Foundation.
There's an event like this every single day in October, and all you have to do is call 211 San Diego to find out where and when and how, and we'll hook you up.
Turns out the mother of Chargers chief executive A.G. Spanos is a breast cancer survivor, and early detection helped save her life.
Well, 98% of women survive, but the key is it has to be caught early. The only way to do that is a mammogram.
And once again, for free screening locations, you can call simply 211. Tonight at 9, KPBS will air a Frontline documentary, League of Denial, the NFL, Concussions, and the Battle for Truth. Peggy Pico has a preview.
Frontline's League of Denial is based on the book by the same name written by 2 ESPN investigative reporters. The book and documentary confront what the NFL knew, when they knew it, and how they deal with brain injury to football players. Here to talk about the medical side of the issue is neurosurgeon Alexander Kalesi, Director of Neurocritical Care at UC San Diego. Welcome.
Thank you, Peggy.
Now, Dr. Kalesi, is there, or could you explain the scientific or medical-based consensus about contact football causing brain damage?
Sure. It's a terrific question. I think the way, from a scientific perspective, I would frame the idea of brain damage is in terms of a concussion, which is a disruption of the function of the brain, and long-term structural damage to the brain, something like chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And I think it's our thinking now that repeated blows to the head, either in football or in other contexts, could absolutely lead to both of those diagnoses.
The chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is a big part of the Frontline documentary tonight, or CTE, is we've heard quite a bit about it.
Sure.
Tell us how it manifests in the body. What sort of symptoms do we see?
Sure. So the disease progresses in 4 fundamental phases. The first is a disruption of mood. So you can have depressive episodes, labile behavior, lashing out, and it actually progresses to disruption of executive functions, difficulty in multitasking, and it ends in full-blown dementia. I do think it's important for your viewers to understand, however, that CTE, unlike a concussion, remains an autopsy diagnosis. So you really only know if you actually suffer from the disease upon your death when the pathologist actually looks at slices of your brains and finds signs of that disease.
And in fact, a post-mortem test revealed a CTE in former Charger Junior Seau,
Sure.
as most of us know. In an interview a few years back, Seau describes what he called the perfect hit. Let's listen.
Sure.
Perfect hit is when you're faced up, coming one-on-one, and you hear them go, just a little,
He talked about the price he was willing to pay.
You have to sacrifice your body. You have to sacrifice years down the line. When we are 50, 40 years old, we probably won't be able to walk. That's the sacrifice that you take to play this game.
So he's talking about the sacrifice that must be made in order to play the game,
Sure.
even preluding to the fact that he may not be able to walk at the age of 40 or 50. Is there a way to play this game without that sacrifice? Is there a way to develop better protection or even play the game without this sort of a risk?
Yeah, no question. I think that the first step is actually to fundamentally change the culture of the game, and I think a lot of things are being done in both youth sports and at the NFL level to change that thinking. I think you can inspire a culture of toughness and at the same time have perspective on what the long-term effects of that style of play are. You've seen changes in rules at the league level. You've also seen changes in technique and equipment at the youth level that I think are going a long way towards making sure that people can play a game many enjoy for a long time in a way that's safe and doesn't jeopardize their long-term health.
And we're going to come back to that, but I want to say that, you know, the NFL, of course, is a multi-billion-dollar industry and one of America's most favorite pastimes. In 2007, they reported on the NFL's own research from their mild traumatic brain injury committee, or most people call it the, you know, MTBI committee. Let's listen from this documentary again.
Those initial studies from the NFL were notorious in telling the world over and over and over again, no, there's no relationship between hitting your head in football and later life problems. No, there's no relationship.
Now, does medical science back that up, that there is no relationship, or have things changed a lot since that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is important when you're interpreting a statement like that. From a scientific standpoint, it's impossible to prove a negative. And we're dealing with a complex condition that plays out over time. I think there is a recognition way back to the 1920s, and when you look at boxers in series, that repeated head injury can cause long-term structural damage to the brain. I think there was, through the early 2000s and 1990s, a failure to recognize that over time that these things do indeed have an impact.
And some things have changed. I just want to get to this as far as with the NFL.
Sure.
You are part of the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant for the NFL and are on the sidelines of Charger games.
Right.
Tell me what you're doing there.
Sure, and that's something that is a program that was started this year by the NFL Concussion Committee, and the idea is that there would be 2 neurosurgical specialists, one on the sideline of each game, that would be a resource in real time for both concussion assessment that can be activated by the team, or if they're in the very rare instance of a catastrophic neurologic injury like a high spinal injury. And the way the system works is now myself and a team of 4 other neurosurgeons here in San Diego are in ready communication with the video replay booth to look and screen for hits in real time that may put a player in danger. Additionally, we're there if the Chargers team staff feels that a player may have suffered a concussion to provide a secondary real-time evaluation and help make return-to-play decisions. I think that's one of many steps that are being taken now to both improve the safety of the game and also to essentially switch our emphasis a little bit to in real time recognizing when these hits are taking place that may put you at later risk down the line.
All right, and there's a whole lot more on our website, kpbs.org. I also want to let folks know, Dr. Kalesi, thank you very much for your insight, that they can watch the entire Frontline documentary, League of Denial, right here on KPBS tonight at 9.
It's been in the works for more than 20 years, but construction finally begun on a cross-border bridge connecting the Tijuana airport to a terminal on the San Diego side. Fronteras reporter Adrian Florido gives us a look.
The Tijuana airport sits right against the U.S.-Mexico border fence. It's so close that many San Diegans use the Tijuana airport to travel to Mexico, or they cross the border to pick up family members flying into Tijuana from other parts of Mexico, like Edith Urieta from Escondido did.
I came to pick up my niece. Yeah, she came from Puerto Vallarta today.
Getting to the airport wasn't a problem for Urieta, but she knew crossing the border back into San Diego would be.
Just expecting some traffic. Usually it's a little bit frustrating because there's traffic, or you get bored because you have to wait in line.
But for airport travelers, that soon won't be a problem. Last month, workers at the Tijuana airport began construction on a new bridge. It's going to allow people flying into the airport to walk right over the border fence, directly into San Diego. A new customs station is going to be built at the end of the bridge, in this empty field in Otay Mesa. Because only ticketed airline passengers will be allowed to use this new cross-border terminal, it's expected to virtually eliminate the wait to cross the border.
It has been a very long time coming, but it is very, very welcomed.
Cindy Gomper-Graves directs the South County Economic Development Council. Her predecessors first started discussing the possibility of a cross-border airport facility with Mexican officials more than 2 decades ago. They knew hundreds of thousands of travelers from the U.S. used the Tijuana airport each year, and they figured if they could just get rid of those annoying border waits, they could drive that number way up and thus promote more cross-border tourism.
Initially, the idea was to pull up airplanes on both sides of the border, have one big building that crossed the border, and this side would be the U.S. and this side would be Mexico. And for security reasons, that was just not feasible. So that twin ports very quickly turned into the cross-border terminal idea, and that's what they ran with.
The current project is funded by private developers on both sides of the border. They've been gathering the mounds of permits needed to build a bridge spanning 2 countries. The U.S. investors are figuring out the logistics of how to fund the customs agents that will need to be stationed on the U.S. side of the bridge. Meanwhile, construction's already started on the Mexican side. The bridge should be operational by the end of 2014. And that has airport officials and many travelers excited. But not everyone is. This man is a taxi operator at the airport. He didn't want to be on camera because he feared that speaking out against the airport's project could cost him his job. He says at least 50% of taxi clients at the airport ask to be driven to one of the 2 existing border crossings. But once the bridge is complete, that business will be wiped out because they'll just cross directly at the airport. In fact, he says he doesn't see the benefits of the project to his city at all. He says building a direct link to the Tijuana airport for U.S. travelers allows them to avoid Tijuana altogether. Tijuana's mayor himself has made this point. But the project's supporters disagree. Cindy Gomper-Graves of the South County EDC says she plans to use the bridge to market the San Diego and Tijuana region as a more attractive place for manufacturing companies that want to have a low-cost factory in Tijuana and warehouses in South San Diego County.
And I think we all agree that those border wait times are a huge deterrent to companies looking at locating on both sides of the border. This will make it easier for them to do that. This will make it more accessible for them to access other markets.
She says one of the main benefits of all that new investment, of course, will be more jobs on both sides of the border, benefiting San Diego and Tijuana alike. Adrian Florido, KPBS News.
And we want to congratulate Adrian. He's moving on. He's heading north to become a reporter for public radio station KPCC in Pasadena. We wish him all the best. Changes in the forecast. Showers tomorrow later along the coast with temperatures in the 60s through Friday. Likewise for the inland valleys, clouds and showers, as well as the mountain areas Thursday and Friday. Higher temperatures expected in the desert with some wind and sunshine. Tonight's stories, you can find them online at kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Good night.